Just a quick reminder, when I'm working, I like to have the coil actually facing me, so it should be pointed down, not up. And that's so that my coiling core more easily stretches to my left, because I'm right-handed. I want this out of the way. My yarn is to the right, and that allows me to wrap this just a lot quicker and easier. So I've wrapped this a couple times. It's time to start coiling it in and create a stitch. So I'm going to rethread my needle. So I have my tapestry needle and I have the end of my yarn. I'm going to fold this in, pinch it nice and tight, and I'm going to get it through the eye of the needle. So that hole is called the eye, and I'm just trying to shove this through very gently, and I'm pulling with just my fingertips. I try not to use my fingernails. Do not tie it, that way you can more easily stitch it through these gaps. So I'm pretty much ready. Now typically I like to keep them about 10 wraps apart before I stitch. So I'm going to complete a figure 8. The figure 8 allows your stitches to be mostly invisible. If they're different colors, then it would be visible, but I ended underneath, so I'm going to be going over this side over here and stitch it through. So over, under, and through. Pull this very carefully. Okay, now I went through, I'm going to end on an under, so I'm going to just kind of wrap in such a way that these crisscross each other, if you can see that. They need to crisscross to complete the figure 8. Now, I will be wrapping over the outside core, and I'm going to pull it really, really tight so that I don't have gaps, and complete a few wraps, again, real tight.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, once again, needle over and through. And wrap it under and over, pull it really, really tight. 1, 2, oh. Sometimes it helps to complete a second stitch, so I'm going to do that here. Pull it through, wrap it under the inside, over the outside.
The figure 8 stitch is meant to be invisible while you're working, but if you're using different colors, you would just change colors and you're stitching a row below, then it's going to be noticeable. So after I get this part finished, I'll show you how to change colors, and I'll show you a different stitch where you can be more purposeful, and it's a lot easier than the figure 8. The figure 8 just wraps it really tightly, it's very neat, and it's hidden. Okay. So I'm trying very hard to get this last stitch in to hold this together. I've got a little bit of thread hanging out right there. Ooh, look at that. I wasn't looking at the back side. So make sure that you are checking and moving that thread to cover any gaps. Okay. So it is time to change colors. And I do want at least this much dangling so that I can cover it up. So I'll show you how. Okay, I have my new color. I have my basket. I have my tapestry needle. I'm gonna move the rest of that out of my way to my left. Now, typically you're going to get at least your body length, if not double, of whatever color of yarn you're using next. Now, if I gave you yarn, it may be 3 or 4 times your body length, so you want to cut it into some manageable sizes that are at least your body length. So I'm going to find both ends of this stuff and make sure I have no knots. Okay, here we go. So I don't even need to weave my needle in yet. What I'm going to do to start, I'm going to find the end of my first color. And I'm going to get it up here on the second coil, hold it in place, find the other end of my new color or my new piece of yarn, and we really only need like an inch length here that they run together. Hold them in place, and I'm going to wrap around, making sure I'm going the same direction that I did the first time. So I like to start on the inside and coil around to the outside. I'm using some different yarn, I guess, than normal. I ordered some weird stuff, so I've kind of lost track of how many times I've wrapped, and for this one I'm probably going to do more than 10 just because of how close I have to keep it together so that you don't see the core. So I've mostly covered this piece that's going on the opposite direction. So it's now being held in place. It is time to thread my first way through. Now I'm going to show you a new technique where you can actually see you can see the stitch. This is not the figure 8. This is a new technique. Some of you are already doing this on your own. It's a lot easier, but it's more visible. So you're going to use the same technique to pinch the thread and put it through the eye of the needle. Here we go. So I just want to have a little bit of overhang. Now what I'm going to do is called the lazy squaw. So the lazy squaw, it's just a lazy way of stitching. I don't like the name. It's kind of misogynistic, and I think we need a new one. So we're going to pick a new name later. But the lazy stitch, you're showing the stitch. So the figure 8 hides it. This one shows the whole thing. So I'm going to go over my outside coil and one on the inside and stitch through between them. Pull it nice and taut and wrap over and do the same thing. Find that spot on the same side, run my needle through and stitch. Now with the lazy stitch, you want to do this at least twice. Personally, I like to do this 3 or 4 times so that visible stitch is really thick. So I'm going to go one more, and about the same spot. And notice when you're stitching, you only ever go one coil up. You never want to go 2 or more. Just once. Okay, now I've stitched 3 times. It is time to wrap. I like that width, it's nice. So I'm going to pull it around and wrap. And remember, I'm going to wrap more than 10 times because I'm using a different yarn.
Actually, 10 looks pretty good. But I'm going to go 12. Okay, so I push this in, hold it in place, and I don't have to stitch through, I don't have to wrap it around, it's not a figure 8. So I'm just kind of feeling it out, about where I want it, there we go. And pull that through. And wrap over 2 coils, under 2 coils, stitch through, pull it taut, and one more time, pot. Now I did 3 here, so I want to do 3. Now I'll look this time and see where I'm stitching. Okay. Oops. Okay, so that's 3 times. Now I'll wrap it around the outer coil. Pull it around. Push those close together. And wrap. Okay.
So, like I said, this was really short. You want to get at least your body length because you don't want to be changing out your yarn this often. So I get to do this again, and I want to get at least 1 full coil around with the same color, just so it's kind of consistent and it looks good. But you can change colors as many times as you feel like. Just think about what it's going to look like at the end. What do you want it to look like? Okay, so I'm going to go cut some more and keep working on this. Thank you for joining me.